I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. There are so many screen adaptations from Night Shift, and most of them are god-awful. The feature-length films are almost entirely trash. I say almost because Maximum Overdrive has big, so bad it's good energy, but because of the lackluster movies King's collection of short stories spawned, I have the lowest of low expectations for the made-for-TV movies it inspired. The first of which is 1991's Sometimes They Come Back. History and background. Sometimes They Come Back was originally to be included in the movie Cat's Eye, which featured two other stories from Night Shift. However, plans changed, and producer Dino De Laurentiis opted to develop Sometimes They Come Back as a separate movie. Directed by Tom McLoughlin, who also directed Friday the 13th. Directed by Tom McLoughlin, who also directed Friday the 13th. This movie was directed by Tom McLoughlin, who also directed Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and has a screenplay written by Mark Rosenthal, who also wrote screenplays for the absolute gem, 1993's The Beverly Hillbillies movie, as well as Tim Burton's 2001 Planet of the Apes reboot. There is very little information out there about the production of this movie, but it was filmed in Kansas and Missouri, while the film is actually set in Stratford, Connecticut. There isn't a great deal out there regarding the initial critical reception of the movie either, but here is what I did manage to find. Ray Loynd of the Los Angeles Times called it, quote, a tight, moody work, unquote. TV Guide rated it 2 out of 5 stars and wrote, quote, the solid cast can't lift the material above the routine, unquote. I do think it's important to point out that this movie has a 67% score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is higher than any of the feature-length films from the Night Shift collection. And while that isn't exactly a high bar to clear, it is kind of funny that a made-for-TV movie beat out all of the higher-budget productions. Is it by the book? For those of you who haven't read the short story, here is a brief synopsis. The past returns to haunt a middle-aged schoolteacher, and the ghosts that appear to him are seeking a sort of misdirected revenge. They supplant other students from his classroom and push the protagonist to his breaking point. In a last-ditch effort to return the teenage tormentors to the crypts they have crawled out of, he makes a deal with an entity that may follow him for the rest of his days. Alright, so this movie plays really close to the source material until it doesn't. The vast majority of the movie is fairly spot on, although there may be a few detours to provide some flashbacks or character depth on occasion. It really stays the course right up until the last quarter. On top of that, the movie isn't nearly as laughably bad as its peers. The acting is shockingly decent, the pacing is solid, and the overall tone is consistent. Don't get me wrong, the movie has its share of flaws and inconsistencies, but I was surprised at how much easier it was to watch than a lot of the others. Most of the others. All of the others, maybe? Especially when considering the sub-basement level expectations I had going into it. It's possible that, due to the fact I had watched numerous terrible Night Shift-based movies in a row, that even though Sometimes They Come Back was objectively not great, it just seemed like a pretty good movie by comparison. Anyway, at first I didn't like what they did with the ending and kind of wished they had stuck to the source material, but then I was shocked to find myself tearing up a bit at the end. I mean, it is a bit silly, maybe even cheesy, but they got me in the feels for a second. So I guess it wasn't necessarily an ineffective conclusion. Soundtrack and score. The soundtrack and score were nothing special. It got the job done, but there was certainly nothing unique or outside of horror genre norms. Creepy violins, eerie swells of noise, and cacophonous, scary sounds. It worked for the movie, but you could exchange the music for that of any other horror movie of the era, and I don't think that even the composer would have noticed. I guess I'll just be grateful that it wasn't a bad 80s synth score. Cast and acting. Leading man Tim Matheson is a great actor. Matheson delivers a convincing, solid performance as Jim Norman, and it's not surprising that he has had such a long, successful career, even if he isn't necessarily a household name. His resume's no joke. I mean, this dude's filmography is massive. You may recognize him from classic comedies like Animal House, Drop Dead Fred, Fletch, and Black Sheep. And more recently, he was in the Child's Play reboot, and he currently plays a recurring character on the TV show This Is Us. Actress Brooke Adams plays Jim Norman's wife Sally, and she also delivers a solid performance. It's nothing to write home about, but she does a good job in the role. Adams played Elizabeth Driscoll in the sci-fi horror classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and also Sarah Bracknell in the Stephen King film The Dead Zone in 1983. Everyone else is decent and no one is terrible. I didn't hate any of the performances in this movie. Will wonders never cease? Special effects. Okay, I'd have to say this was where the movie suffered the most, but by Children of the Corn standards, this movie's special effects were top-notch. There is one scene where a train collides with a car, and there are some very obvious fireworks thrown into the resulting explosion, like very clearly like low-budget 4th of July fireworks. There isn't a lot of blood and gore in this movie, but there are some enjoyable makeup effects and a gruesome puppet corpse that is pretty awesome. There's definitely some old school Tales from the Crypt vibes, which I can appreciate. Final thoughts. Of all the Night Shift adaptations, this one is the least so far. I still have a few more to subject myself to, but of the 6 I've watched at the time of filming, I'd actually consider watching this one again, whereas I would never watch any of the other movies again if my life depended on it. So yeah, if you liked the short story, you should watch the movie. Apparently there are 2 sequels to this movie. Sometimes they come back again, and sometimes they come back for more. But I'm not going to watch either of them because I refuse. I don't want to ruin a good thing here. I'm just going to stick to this first one. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty please with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.